Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil, Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most cutting-edge, crime-riddled work. I'm your conniving hostess, Kippos.
And I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versa. We'll be coming to you with interrogations and debriefings of Claw's latest updates as they're revealed to the public. And for this inaugural episode, we have a special guest.
My name is Elliot Diebold, and I was happily chilling in my own podcast, but I've been kidnapped and brought here. But luckily, it was a good thing to do because I have a very good life in this better podcast, so that makes it okay to do kidnap.
As it is with all crimes.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with that, realistically.
Hmm.
But yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about Claw, and then excited to follow this show. It
Yeah,
was annoying not having a show for Arc One of Claw to follow.
Yeah, there definitely was no episodes. There was nothing to speak of there.
exactly. Yeah, no, for me personally, I also, I think the first two chapters came out and I went to the gym and I was like, I'm not listening to anybody talking about them. This just feels wrong. So if nobody else is doing it, I guess you've just got to do it yourself.
You could say it was a real disruption of the claw and order.
It, it really was. Okay, so I think let's jump into some chapter summaries straight away for our first episode and our first arc. So in 1.1, we meet Mia, an anxious mother of two trying her best to manage her constant headaches and her two jobs. She juggles a babysitter, anxiety, and cryptic messages from her husband before heading out to help someone take a hike. Unfortunately, the person she's trying to help out with hiking is a bit of an asshole. So, together with her husband, they decide to pull the plug on this would-be exercise aficionado.
In Claw 1.2, since time is money, Mia and Carson blow their whole paycheck, night, and bathroom, telling their client Nathaniel to take a hike off the mortal coil. After some impromptu butchering and waste disposal, Mia clues in on a violation of the terms of their pact and discovers that her employer has been moving their customers to the far-flung land of next door.
Luckily, Carson is here in 1.3 to talk Mia off the ledge, and she then reflects on her very accurate thoughts about their relationship and how he could do better, that sort of stuff. She sets up a play date for Tyr with some random kid, I forget, before helping Ripley finish off the secret project. We learn about the fall, and Carson then gets some money despite the job going poorly using his superhuman powers of people skills. He then tries to coach Mia in how to talk to people as she gives Josie some Taylor Swift tickets. It doesn't really work though. And then the next day they get a call about a new job that they have to do, even though there's a million reasons not to do it. But even worse, Mia sees some old green car.
Devastating.
I do actually think that the ending of 1.3, like those last couple of sentences, that's like peak Wildbow to me. Like just the noise and the anxiety and the pressure and everything screaming at Mia to move. And she just has to sit there in the middle of it all, suffering. It's chef's kiss, It's absolutely beautiful.
One of the things that was most apparent to me by this point was that like especially with the names like random for the kids and the state that the world is depicted in, and that final moment, as you said, of the sheer distress of having to stay still because that's the best strategy in this chaos. Just how much I was falling in love with this setting because
Oh, yeah.
it's so like it feels like it could be tomorrow,
Mhm.
but it's just that little bit different with like choices that you think people will make soon. And I mean it's especially a good setting for a criminal enterprise, because it
Mhm.
lets people get away with a little bit more than they might otherwise, but it makes things seem plausible, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, like it's the real world, but it's like 10% worse.
Mm,
Yeah, it's the anxiety of the last like 5 years ratcheted up
mm,
a couple of
Exactly.
levels. Like, there's talk of like elections being cancelled and everyone's gossiping about it. And it reminded me of the whole January 6th thing a couple of years ago in the
Mhm.
States. Like, yeah. And the funny thing about that is because we're in Mia's head, there is a little part of me that's like, maybe their world isn't that bad and we're just seeing it through Mia's eyes. Like she's prone to anxiety. So, like, she's doom scroll incarnate. I could see that maybe it's exact, but like, or maybe it's not. I don't know. Like maybe this is part of why she's like this. It's very
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Okay. So in 1.4, we meet Davey, just a regular guy who's trying to get his beloved family to safety amidst this political unrest. He has the pair bend their rules by removing the cameras and microphones in the cabin, But Mia is able to feel good about this job regardless, as she's going to be able to help some kids get free. Mia then meets a scared child and new daughter, Geo.
In 1.5, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a gun drone. Unable to take a compliment, Mia deduces the existence of a drone guy, instrumental to Davy's surveillance, who made the rookie mistake of tracking her husband where a camera could pick up a speedy black dot. Truly, rookie mistake. To
Incredible.
appear professional and unbothered, the pair volunteer edited footage and some of their cameras. Then, threading the needle between 8 cars, a daisy chain of drones, a big breakfast, and a bathroom break, Carson rescues Geo from beneath the noses of the kitchen chefs by inviting his wife to have sex in the woods. Truly a tried and tested strategy. After telling Geo to make up a new name for herself and revealing Mia's own name to the girl, we were left with the image of Davy and the son he'd beaten in rage as his army continues to rally to reclaim what's his.
And then after stuffing Geo, sorry, I mean Valentina, into a like, so is it a bag or I was told a tote is some kind of box in Canada. I don't know what, but anyway, Valentina's stuffed into a small space and treated like garbage to hide the fact that she's treasure. Mia then masterfully tricks drone guy into de-shinning himself and making sure he won't go on any field missions again anytime soon. And then we get the goss on Natalie and her unforgivable crime, which was letting Mia kidnap her baby.
Yeah. Then finally, for this arc in 1.7, Davy quickly loses his position on top of the anxiety leaderboards as Natalie approaches Mia for a conversation. Ripley is overheating in her overalls, and so Mia brings her new ones to avoid being a hypocrite about letting her cook in the heat. Later, Mia discovers that the contact has been dismembered by a barber and decides that if she can't leave him, she'll beat him, calling a crack team of the criminals she once disappeared out of retirement for one last job.
And what a fun setup to lead into Arc 2 as well. It's like, oh,
It's
okay, we're
brilliant.
escalating.
I feel like for the first like 3 chapters I read, I was like, God, this is such a good introduction to like what's happening here. And then I finished the arc and I'm like, damn, this is such a good introduction to the rest of the story. Like,
Hmm.
that's brilliant.
Really follows a sort of like ramp structure. Like I thought we were on the road, and as things got off the rails and started to like accelerate and gain air, it was felt like we had just enough time to figure out what a normal day for Mia and Carson looks like, to then immediately take normal and throw it into a fire, namely the entire city being on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of reading like some of Wabo's earlier works, like Pact and Worm. Like I remember having a
Hmm.
real love-hate relationship with the way that like things wouldn't just go back to normal for the characters.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I guess, after having Pale and Ward kind of back to back as these really more complex, intricate works. Not that this work isn't complex or intricate already, but it's very fun going back like pacing wise. I'm really enjoying that return to the more bombastic worm
Yeah.
pact era pacing where like it's just every arc feels like it's ending on an oh shit, sorry, every chapter feels like it's in this big oh shit
Mm.
moment.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
It's very
Yeah.
fitting of the serial format,
I think so.
to
Yeah.
make sure people come in the next week.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
we are honored with having 2 chapters a week, which is going to be difficult for us to keep up with, I think.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think actually really interesting that you brought up Worm because, when I've been thinking about Mia as a protagonist and kind of just, internally comparing her to the others a bit, I think her closest equivalent is like Taylor. And
Mm,
a lot of that is in her, like her paranoia and especially her compartmentalization, which is
mm,
the best we've seen since Taylor, I think. Um,
mm.
but yeah, I think, yeah, she's got that Taylorish vibe.
Especially as far as similarities between the 2. Um, Mia and Taylor have both responded to their worlds by expanding how much information they can absorb.
Mm,
Um, and
true.
one thing that I remember being spoken about a lot, as people went from Worm to Ward, was how Taylor's perspective covered like so much ground, and
Hmm.
she would be absorbing information, and the descriptions like of the narrative lens would be going around the entirety of the events as they happened and well beyond how much our eyes could see.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get to Ward, we have a very different protagonist, and the amount that we can see it shrinks back down. So there's this huge contrast. Whereas with Mia, for her part, she's got all these cameras. She's got so much data that she's already stored. She can check old files. There's this description, I think, in chapter like 1.1 might have been happened again with Davy when we were introduced to the kitchen and the Cavalcantis. Um, the way that she just within minutes has so much context and so much background, and we as readers get that background because diegetically she's doing that research. So the
Mm.
same pace that the character is understanding the situation, we also get to understand the situation, and that's really elegantly done.
Yeah, I think there was that great moment where Davy gets out of the car and she had gone like in like two paragraphs before, she had no idea who this would be. And then Davy gets out of the car and she's like, "Oh cool, that's Cavalcanti." And then so she knows then that, when he says, "Oh, I'm going to bring my family," she knows he means his wife, his two daughters and his son. Like, yeah, she's just so it's brilliant and I love it. I love Mia.
Yeah, she's like the most terrifying parts of Taylor and Kenzie combined.
Oh my
Yes.
She's a
gosh.
really special source.
What
Yes.
a dangerous combination. This is under our status report headings. In the initial impressions of the characters, we've talked about Mia and we've seen her evolve a bit. I'd really be interested to know what people think of Carson.
I like him. He's not really a character that I guess like his archetype of character doesn't come up that often in terms of like being like that super people pleasery, very charismatic, very easy to mesh in. He does remind me a little bit of Psy from Twig. And he's just down bad for his Amazonian goddess, and I just love him. He's very relatable.
Well, see, that's what I find fascinating though, because I get the attraction to Mia to a degree, but also like there's a big part of me that relates to some of Mia's neurotic,
Yeah,
anxiety-driven insecurities, and
same.
those are the parts that I definitely have this overlap with her, where I'm like, I have been trying to figure out since I read this what Carson is really getting out of this relationship, and I don't understand it. Like, and that's what I'm really hoping we get into his head soon, because I just like, yes, Mia is like, hot and terrifying and that's good, but
Oh
like
my goodness.
there's other there's other hot and terrifying women out there who don't come with all this baggage, and I'm not talking about the kids. I'm talking about the kidnapping of the kids. Like, so, like, what has this man so fucking ride or die for this woman? I'm just so on Mia's page where I'm like, I do not understand.
Mm.
Mm.
Like, if this man wanted to use his people manipulation powers for anything other than getting in Mia's pants, the world feels like it would be in trouble. So, like, why is he so content with that?
Mm.
Yeah, I love Carson because I don't understand him at all.
It's interesting because we
Mm.
didn't get an interlude this arc. We're very used
Yeah.
to in Wild Bow web serials getting interludes throughout to get the perspectives of other characters.
Yeah, I am
Yeah.
hoping for, like, Carson Arc 2, because this serial has been written in third person so far. I'm
Mm.
kind of hoping that means multiple protagonists, so I'm hoping, like, we'll do, an arc each person, and Carson's the only other person. Oh, maybe, Valentina could be a POV, but yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love Carson arc 2. I think either we're gonna get Carson's point of view very soon, or we'll get it at the end, like
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where I'm at. It's either gonna happen very soon and we're gonna really be able to understand him, or there's just so much more there that Wildbow doesn't wanna reveal to us just yet, and it's gonna happen right at the end and we're gonna understand a lot more.
Suddenly validating all her paranoia.
God, I hope not.
Yeah, it would be fun to leave us sitting here because it's working on me. I'm sitting here stewing in it, like, I'm sitting right beside her, and he'll wake up and leave me, and I'm sitting there kinda going, "Yeah, like, he could, though." And his perspective will either confirm or deny that in a way that would remove the anxiety, so it could be very funny to leave us stewing in it for the
Yeah.
rest of the story.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I think it might last until the end because so much of Mia, like she has that moment early on when she says, she loves Carson, she's like super happy he's there, but she doesn't trust him and she doesn't
Mm.
know if she
Mm.
can trust him. And I think that like that's kind of that core anxiety to Mia. And it would be really great. I'm not saying like this shouldn't like it shouldn't go to Carson's point of view because I'd love to see Carson's point of view. But I think that I could definitely see this story moving along in a way such that we see 6.x is Carson's point of view and like looking back at everything and going, what the fuck?
Yeah, I do love, like, what you just brought up, like, Mia is this walking contradiction in so many ways. And it is all these things like she's at war with herself in
Mhm.
in so many ways. Like, yeah, she's in love with Carson and she does trust him, but also doesn't because she doesn't trust anyone. And like this is sort of like the thing. There's been a lot of talk, I think, about how like she is exactly the kind of person she's trying to protect her kids from. She's constantly talking about
Mhm.
how 90% of people are useless, and then the other 90% of those are like lazy or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's the 1% you've gotta be terrified of, and that's her, like, but yeah, I do love, how this arc sort of slowly reveals Mia to us, I guess I'd say, like, you start the arc and it's like, "Why is she like this?" Like, this woman is a lot, and how does this happen? And then we sort of learn about the fall, and
Mhm.
then we learn about Io after that, and it's sort of by the end of the arc, I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, why she this is why she's like that." Like, that would really mess you up. Um, like, the
Mhm.
fall, losing that sense of control over yourself, and so, like, no wonder it's such a sore point for her that she needs control of herself and her environment. She lost that because of the fall.
Mhm.
And then we see that on top of that, her whole family kind of started because she kidnapped a kid. So of course that's going to put that sprinkling of paranoia on top of
Yeah.
that control freak nature
Mm.
because now
So
there
good.
is a reason to be paranoid and think that you've got enemies around every corner because she's sitting where she's built this new life that she needs to control on
Mm.
top of a pretty fucked up lie.
Yeah.
So like of course this anxiety and paranoia has become that.
Yeah, I think during my live read, I described Mia's life as like a house of cards. And like the further on that I went, just the more accurate that felt. Just learning,
Mhm.
how fragile everything is, even though it feels so good in some of the moments and it feels so strong. But, at its core, it's so fragile, it's so, 5 minutes from explosion.
Mm.
Well, it's like she talks a lot in the last chapter, I think it is, about how the foundation is crumbling, and I
Hmm.
just think what's so funny about that is, the foundation is shit. Like, the whole thing
Yeah.
about Mia's life is she's built this incredible, like, Fort Knox on top of a straw house foundation is what it
Mm.
Yeah.
feels like. And so
Yeah.
it's
That,
like
that
like
feels
she
accurate.
yeah, like, she's put so much effort into securing everything, but the foundation was so weak, and that's what's catching up in her this arc, it seems.
Mm.
Yeah.
The the thing that catches me within that, this Fort Knox that she's built, that the sheer amount of investment she's made, was a description that she has of how someone that carries a lot of weight would have very powerful legs. So she thinks that she's not intelligent. She just thinks that she's had to
Hmm.
work very hard for what mental
Mm.
acuity she does have. So it's almost as good just because she's put the effort in. Um, and that self-deprecation to allow herself any like in order to allow herself a compliment, she has to say, well, it's only because I'm in perpetual pain and I have every disadvantage. It sort of matches to that structure of a great castle built on foundations of straw, because as we see with her, like, nightmares about Io, or Ion, or as it turns out, Natalie,
Hmm.
um, she's this paranoia that causes her to put in as much effort as she does is vested in, no matter how much effort she puts in, things can come crumbling down. And she's had to start from zero and build everything up before from her injury. Um, and um, within that mentality is this expression that she wants to give on to her kids, the thing that she tells every she presumably has told Carson this, but she is planning in her internal monologue to teach her kids this model of 90% of people are idiots. The
Hmm.
remaining 10% are bogged down by paperwork and toil and trouble and just how much a hassle it is to do good. Within that, she's not putting herself in the 90% or the 10%. She can't give herself like the frame of which means I am good or which means I'm worthy of my
Yeah.
husband, which she can't like frame it in a way that puts her in either category. She is behaving as though she belongs among the idiots that she disparages, and that's why she has to put in all that effort. And to know that that goes even further back into her past, when she has that description that I brought up at the start of her, like someone carrying around a lot of weight, having strong legs. and then being the same as someone having a chronic headache, and so having to think harder about things. We then get to see her mother, and there's the direct description of has the height but not the weight. And
Yeah.
just the fact that she herself is building her whole life around being a mother to a child she has stolen and trying to be a better mother than her mother. And as she is trying to express things onto the next generation, she is trying to reinterpolate the values that she grew up with, and the person that she had to frame herself off of. We know nothing about her dad, just that he was absent. So we're left with this Mia whose whole life philosophy is trying to justify not just her choice to leave home, but her choice to make a new one out of the worst materials.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what's like that sort of leads into one of the other fun things about Mia is yeah, like it's absolutely not a coincidence that she impulsively kidnapped this child just
Oh,
after
yeah.
having that lack of conversation with her mum.
Yeah, after essentially being disowned by her, like, her own family, and then, yeah, she leaves and cries and finds a kid, and it's like, "Well," and she finds a kid that's, like, yeah, like, she's being kind of not, like, in the same way, like, abused because obviously, Mia was very much abused, and I think we'll probably circle back around to this in a bit, but I don't think, young Ripley was being abused, these things
Mm.
happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, she sees it as like that same kind of abuse, and it seems like from what we see that Mia was essentially like ignored at home and treated like a burden, and so it seems like she's kind of seeing the same in Ripley and saying, well, I know what this was like, and I can help, like I can save you.
Mm.
So she does.
She's absolutely kind of being triggered by
Yeah.
seeing a kid kind of being ignored by a parent and unloved, and it's just like, "Mine now." But what's fun is, like, we don't see Mia think like that, and there's, like, a number
Hmm.
of times in the arc where it becomes pretty clear that, like, Mia is very separate from, like, Mia's emotions in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, there's that great bit, I think it's in the 1st or 2nd chapter, where the guy sits down to take a shit, and Mia's like, "Cool, let's kill him."
Yeah.
And Carson's like, "Oh, are you angry at him?" And she sort of thinks about it for a second, then she's like, "Yeah,
Yeah. I pulled that out in my notes here as well. It's such a great moment.
yeah."
You know
Like she
what?
just
Yeah, I don't like this guy.
yeah. But, like, I think this is something we see a lot from her is, like, she's as somebody who's kind of reconstructed herself after the fall, like, she talks a lot about how she makes rules based on problems she runs into since the fall, like, that seems to be her MO ever since she's been rebuilding herself is, "Okay, if something happens, I build a rule, and then I stick to that rule forever because it is now a rule." Except also she constantly breaks the rules, but that's a separate discussion.
Mm.
Um and what's funny is I think in Mia's head, she's like, "Oh, and these rules account for my emotions because I have lots of rules around anxiety, which is an emotion." But she's so clearly blind to so much of what she's feeling. She's kind of logicked herself into being this person who's just completely blind to about half of what she's feeling. And yeah, she's got all these massive blind spots
Mm.
that are just really fun because it. I didn't quite notice them at first
Hmm.
when I was in her headspace, but then the more you sort of sit and think about what Mia's doing, the more you're like, "Oh, man, this woman has just epic blind spots to her own headspace." And so she in her head, it's like she's got a lot of control, but she's just completely blind to what she can't see, which, ties into all this shit about cameras and them having blind spots too. It's yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think especially with children, I think Mia has this obsession, which I think I don't think is that hot of a take, but like I think even in 1.3, like we see when Mia gives the quote unquote Taylor Swift est true uh, tickets to Josie, um, like Carson brings up, oh like we have to like let her parents decide, and she is pissed, like she hates that. There's this moment where they're interacting where she clearly like just shuts down at the idea of like, no, like because it's like, no, I've decided that Josie gets these tickets and gets to go see Tay Tay, and it's
Mm.
like just the idea that someone else could decide to parent this child, someone who is the parent of this child, could decide to parent the child, and Mia is she's not
No.
fucking happy.
Well, I think that's one of Mia's like really fun contradictions. Is one of the main things she tries to control is giving kids autonomy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, it's a really big deal for her that these kids have the ability to decide things for themselves. We see that with, like, how Ripley dresses. I'm
Mhm.
sure it'll come up for Tyr if he ever stops just running into things. Um, or I suppose she lets him do that. But yeah, it's like that's what's really fun is Mia is this big control freak, but that hasn't turned into her like being overbearing on the kids. It's like this weird aspect to it where she's like, I have to control their ability to have whatever they want in their lives. And that's like it's so it's like turns her into this weirdly good parent in a really kind of nonsensical way. Like, yeah, I love the way Mia's
Yeah.
just constantly walking around and I'm like, this is such an odd person, like with like a weird, like, yeah, I don't know, like contradictions to her. It's fun.
Mm.
Mm.
It's like she's aware that caring for other people is hard for her, um, and that like we see her just like deactivate her empathy when she
Yes.
kills
Mhm.
her first client or ex client, as she insists, Nathaniel, um, and within that, she's like unable to understand Carson, even as she puts a lot of effort into trying to understand him, and like is like listening to what he's saying but just can't decode it. And then she's very attentive to her kids and try like she goes above and beyond, I would say, in making sure that Ripley is comfortable.
Mhm.
But it is very deliberate and mechanical in that like she wants like almost like from a virtue or a moral like axiomatic standpoint for the kids to have autonomy. So she goes above and beyond for them. But the moment that it's like the drone guy is endangering her children or Nathaniel has like botched the operation and tried to make a call away, she is just completely brutal because
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
she's applying a skill to empathize and she's applying it like she's investigating like what Carson is saying to try and understand him. It's very intellectual, very deliberate. And then the moment that she stops putting in that effort, just like murderous rage comes through. The thing that really struck me was when she was doing her gym weights, which she hadn't, to my memory, mentioned beforehand,
She hadn't, yeah.
and she's pumping steel to try and get like the stress out of her body or at least put it to good purpose. And it occurs to her that Valentina might be uncomfortable with how loud this is, especially with like what she's recently been through, and that she might be shell shocking her, and she chooses to stop. Which is very sweet, but also um, there's no self awareness in until she
Mhm.
makes that deliberate decision. She's acting purely off of habit to go to the gym when she's feeling especially distressed. And until that point in the narration where she makes that decision, there's no awareness that she is that muscular and that she is a like dedicated bodybuilder in that way because she's like it's a rare person that makes that part of their habit. So she has like a further blind spots with like the way that she chooses to treat the tote bag with Valentina in it, where she says, "Oh, because I'm a woman, it'll look like it's less heavy." But when
Yeah.
That
she's
was
an
so good.
Amazon, she's
Yeah.
huge, um, and like in turn, there's a further blind spot where her self image, because she doesn't understand that she's put effort into it and that that effort is paid off. She also doesn't understand that Carson might value that in a real like trustworthy way.
Yeah.
um, and it's so interesting to be in a perspective that is so biased. It's a very unreliable narrator who
Mm.
also talks a lot about dealing with unreliable narrators, where
Mhm.
she's like accounting for the 90% of people who are just not going to be smart enough to notice things. And the one more thing, the car seat. She's trying to figure out the lead that Natalie has found
Oh,
Oh my
that's
god.
to
insane,
to
yeah.
seek her out.
Fucking
A
god.
car seat which she has already nigh eviscerated to try and make it look
Yeah.
different. She thinks that someone out there will have the mental acuity, the magnifying glass, to realize that the car seat must be out there somewhere, and that the one that she's already butchered to look different will be identifiable. And she freaks out
Yeah,
about it.
she
When
smashed it
like,
up and she
mm,
put it in not just in, not in bin like, in trash bags like any normal person would do. She put a bunch of other rubbish in a trash bag, then she put the parts of the car seat in it, and then surrounded it with more rubbish. So it's like, it's in the middle of, like, this bag full of other shit, and she did it with like 10 bags or something. Like, it's not all in one piece. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to be spread out. Like, she's insane. Like, there's just no
I
way that it's this like car seat.
At the same time, she's applying a level of detail that
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
would absolutely apply, and because we've seen her, like, in the way, like, she investigated the pact
Hmm.
cards to figure out that, her old, uh, clients had been settled in her town.
Yeah.
Like, if you are that good of an investigator, you are almost justifying that level of paranoia. But it's like, do you see how I just like want to emphasize how mechanical her empathy is, how much of a skill it
Hmm.
is, because it tilts and it starts to go way off course.
Hmm.
Yeah. The car seat is like a great example of this way that Mia is a genius, but also
Yeah.
just kind of a fucking dumbass. Like, because yeah, like there's absolutely this lead is going to turn out to be something so much more benign, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's people related, just because that seems to be her blind spot. Like
Hmm.
she's thinking about the car seat because that's the part of it she thought about, and I like, yeah, this comes into her blind spots because she thinks about the car seat and stuff. So she's like, that must be the lead, and she's probably just missed something far more interpersonal and benign because she didn't have Carson in her life back then.
Yeah, like, I think a couple of people have brought up, like, the idea that maybe, her mom called the police and was like, "Hey, my daughter's fucking crazy. This is the kind of shit that I could see her doing, but I don't have any evidence. Anyway, she's going to go live in Camrose. Good luck." Like,
Yeah,
and I could see that being a very valid, um,
Very
thing.
valid lead.
Yeah, exactly. Compared to, oh no, someone like was digging through the trash and found a piece of an old car seat and went, you know what? This might have been like that piece, like that car seat that child got, kidnapped from 10 years ago. Crazy. Like,
yeah. But I think like this to circle back a bit to what you were just saying, Vastasai, like because I kind of I think I've talked about it in podcasts before. I kind of relate to that needing to switch empathy on sometimes aspect to Mia. But I think something we're seeing is like in Mia's head, I think it's something she completely turns on and off. And this is like a big thing for Mia is, like she does it a lot with the identities too. It's like really important to her that the second Valentina is Valentina. She's no longer Geo. That's her ex
mhm.
brother. That's her ex dad. Like,
Yeah.
and that makes sense coming from like something like the fall and like her
Mhm.
family is. It's very important to me that people have that ability to just this is my new life now. Like I have severed, cut ties, all done, connections over, and I think the story's already kind of challenging
Mhm.
how accurate it is for her that she can do that. Like she tries very hard, but obviously Io's now catching up with her. I think there were some comments about how like after she chopped Nathaniel up and did all that shit, I think she did get like a bit sick and stuff. Like like there was an energy to her dealing with the day after that of like I don't think this affected her as little as she thought. So like I think in
Yeah.
Mia's head she can like be like, oh, I'm in mum mode and now I'm in criminal psychopath mode, and these are two separate Mias. And I think the story is already kind of trying to say that's not how it works. These
Mm.
aren't
Mhm.
completely like separate people, and I think that's coming in a lot of different ways. But this is what's really fun is yeah, Mia like overestimates I think both her and everyone else's ability to just be like cool. It's a new
Yeah.
me, and
Yeah.
sorry, another example of this before I shut up is just about every 20 minutes it feels like Mia's like we got to book it. We're getting out of here. New
Yeah.
life, whatever. And it's just she's so full of shit with that. Like it's just
Yeah.
like she's so clearly deluded about that. But I think that's part of it. Is Mia is like, oh, it's super easy to just go start a new life, and now she has a family. Like that's actually
Mhm.
not super easy anymore.
Mm.
And these are the things that are catching up to her. Is actually you can't just completely live two lives like this.
Yeah, and I think as well, like touching on like the conditional empathy, like we see with Valentina, like the night of when she's rescuing her, she's like full basically mum mode about her, and trying to like rescue her and everything. And then in the morning, one of the things that Valentina says is like, "Oh, I miss my mum," and in that moment, she kind of regrets it, which is like, holy shit, Mia! Like she regrets
Mm.
saving Valentina in that moment because to her, like in her mind already, like Valentina is her new daughter. So like she like yeah, like just having that disconnect between like, oh, if you're not going to be my daughter, I kind of regret like saving you at all, which is,
Hmm.
I don't know, super fucked up.
Also, like, there was that description for when she's taking Nathaniel apart of it having been more intimate than like any of the
Yeah.
experiences that she had, like
Hmm.
raising her kids, her kids. Quote marks, and like being with Carson in any way as and she identifies it as that degree of profound and still behaves as though it is something she can just compartmentalize and put away
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
behave perfectly normally about. And like that in that same way, she the moment that she like has Valentina in her care, and is immediately thinking of her as a daughter, I don't think at any point she communicates to Valentina that she's up for adoption.
Yeah.
um, like the I
Well, it's not
think,
negotiable.
yeah, it's
Exactly. Yeah.
things are so obvious to her that it's she really does believe that it is just you're a client or you're an ex-client, you're a family or you're not family, you're allowed to live or you're not allowed to live, um, and it's wild that someone with such black and white morality would live such a gray moral life,
Hmm.
without really seeming awareness of how much she's mixing her paints.
Yeah, like, she's kidding herself because the thing she's like, "Oh, I have my white life, which is a family, and I have my black life, which is the criming, and they're totally separate, and it's fine." And yeah, like, this is the whole thing with her is, like, feels like she's constantly being like, "Yeah, you know, this is like, yeah, this label applies here, and this label applies here," and the story is already kinda going out of its way to be like, "No, no, 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 that's not how that works." And I think the best example of this is when we find out that Ripley Dunn not be her baby, and she actually stole it, because
She stole a baby.
well, it's like, but chap, like,
Hey,
yeah,
free
like,
baby.
yeah, she goes
Oh, hey,
full dingo,
who left this baby
and
out here? Oh my
Jesus.
goodness, is it for me?
But it's funny because like, chapter 2 of this story, we watch Mia, like, play solitaire while she patiently waits for a guy to die because she poisoned. Then she chops him up into little pieces, washes his hair and, like, esophagus out so, the decapitated head isn't dirty. And, like, it's like, you don't leave chapter 2 thinking, "Oh, yeah, Mia is a good person." You know what I mean? Like,
Speak for
she
yourself.
yeah, well, she's fine. Like, you don't
It was
wanna
so
think
nice of her to wash his hair. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so sweet.
Um, but like, I did kind of buy into her fantasy that like, oh, but that's criminal Mia, and then she's just good mum Mia the rest of the time. And it does seem like she's living these two lives. And then as that's being challenged, I think that yeah, that comes together as we find out that actually no, this family's foundation is built on the fact that she nicked this kid.
Hmm.
Like, the criminal side is not disparate from the family side. The 2 of them have been built side by side because they're founded on her doing something kind of fucked up.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's like, yeah, like this is what I'm really enjoying seeing is I guess I came into this story off the back of like watching Spy Family and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which felt like great priming for this. Because they're both also stories that are playing around a lot with the idea of like contrasting or juxtaposing important spy shit and like benign family issues, and cause really sort of diving headfirst into exploring that juxtaposition too, and sort of saying no, 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 you can't keep them apart. Like, you are you, and you can't just live two separate lives. It's very fun.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. I do want to talk about the like the 15 seconds thing that
Mm.
Natalie says and how Mia's like, no, it's 20 minutes every time. Because I think like I think it's really, and I did see
Ah,
some discussion.
20 minutes plus or minus, however long it took Mia to get there.
True,
True.
true.
It's so
Um,
important.
it's so important. But yeah, I did see like a little bit of discussion saying like, should we believe, like, who should we believe here? Should we say like Natalie's right? Should we say Mia's right? And I think in my mind, the most logical thing to do here is to take kind of what we see at face value. It wasn't 15 seconds. It was, maybe it was closer to half an hour. But I think what we can really then look at is like, why does Natalie always say 15 seconds? And why does Mia always say, well, no, you're a fucking liar, like you're just lying
Mm,
to make yourself feel better.
Mm.
Um,
Because obviously, liar, liar, pants on fire means that you can't be a mother.
yeah, exactly. That's right. If you lie ever, you're a bad mom and you shouldn't have your children. Um, but yeah, because I think I think it is really, and I think it's really interesting, and I definitely see from Natalie's point of view how you can kind of twist that in your mind, and I think it's very natural to twist that in your mind. It's not I was having a screaming
mm,
match that kind of circled around on different points for half an hour. It's I was in, I yelled at him, I came back out to check on my kid, and she's gone. Which is just like that's kind of how memories of these kinds of things work.
yeah,
Like your brain is going to distort things like this.
Yeah. Who has a, like, exacting memory of time?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Maximum, Natalie probably thought it was 5 minutes, like being
mm,
realistic, in
yeah,
her like dark moments when she thinks, oh, maybe I did leave her there like longer. She probably thinks 5 minutes maximum, not 20 or 30, which, in reality. And like
and
that's super natural. Like that's normal. Like that's just how brains work. And so
yeah,
what she's doing is she's giving herself kind of not quite the excuse, but like her point of view as she sees it is that the thing that she did was not so bad.
yeah.
Chamomile tea was sorry. Well, I can't actually remember her proper name. Chamomile
Camellia?
teal, Camellia teal, was never in any actual danger because she was, only ever gone for 15 seconds. And these things can just happen in the blink of an eye,
mm,
click of the fingers, and your child's gone. And so what Mia then sees is Mia is seeing Natalie essentially make excuses, like
Mm,
and it just kind of lets her compound like, oh, not only is Natalie leaving her child outside in danger in this car seat in the heat, but she is doing that and then lying to everyone about it. Like she is making an excuse for herself, and therefore even more than before, she's a terrible person and a terrible mother, and she never really deserved to have Ripley.
mm.
meanwhile meanwhile, Mia is sitting there going, "Oh, yeah, that's my daughter. How dare she lie about
Yeah,
my daughter? Like, what are
yeah,
you
which it's so
talking about?"
good. It's so good.
It's also like I don't know. I think there's definitely room to question, like when Mia says 20 minutes or whatever. I mean, when you're standing there in a stressful situation, like 1 minute
Yeah,
can feel like 10. Like it could have been more like 5. It could have been 10. Like
yeah, I
sure,
can see that. Yeah.
yeah, like that's the. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but like it,
Mhm.
it kind of almost doesn't matter. I think what's very fun about this is every parent I've talked to about this, like since reading it, has very much been like, I think every parent has this moment where they kind of fuck up with a kid for 15 minutes, right? Like it's such a
Yeah.
reasonable mistake. I think it came up in All Packed Up too when we had my parents on about that time I crawled onto the road and
Oh,
somebody who
Jesus
was going to
Christ.
run me over picked me up. Like
Oh,
I don't
terrifying.
think I deserve to be kidnapped as
No.
a part of that. It's other reasons to be kidnapped, but
Actually, Elliot, I'm sorry, but, I was actually informed by your parents that they were the drivers and that they, kidnapped you, and they tell that story as though they were the ones that had let you out onto the road, as opposed to the ones that had
Oh.
kidnapped you after. I'm so sorry you had to find out like this.
hiding in plain sight. That's
Yeah,
clever of them.
that is clever.
But yeah, like I just the whole like Mia has sort of built this foundation, and she's not even really trying to be honest. She doesn't think about it much, but it kind of
Mhm.
seems like her justification is this child was left alone in the car for 15, so she's a bad mom. And I just every parent you talk to kind of has one story that's like it's just impossible to have a child who's fully dependent on you to be alive and not make a 15-minute mistake for 2 years.
Yeah,
Like that's
like
just
you
yeah,
you're probably haven't been eating that well because you're stressed because you have a new child. You're probably not feeling that well because, your body is stressed because you've had a new child. You're getting no fucking sleep.
your
Mm.
deadbeat husband is apparently or boyfriend or whatever is doing fuck all from the
Yeah,
sounds of the
Yeah,
sitting there
argument
playing
they're
video
having.
games and not even gonna change the fucking diaper. Like,
just
yeah,
to give grace to Natalie for a moment, like, the argument that she was having was that she needed help
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
a mother,
exactly.
and that it was challenging, and that she was aware that she wasn't able to keep up with the needs of her child, which is really caring.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's very lucid, and it's not a terrible person thing to be
Mhm.
claiming that you need assistance.
Yeah.
So, like, the vision that Mia has of Natalie, where she is, this, like, like conservative, rude, critical, uptight, just meanie,
Yeah.
who dares
Yeah.
to come to her child's school and complain about Ripley being in boyish clothes. How dare she? Is like it doesn't actually mesh with the Natalie that we see at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because like this was a woman that had like every reason to be distressed, and even then was talking about something for the best interests of her kid. And
Yeah.
like, sure, she may have let her guard down during that time, but it's as you're saying, like, are you going to be able to be vigilant and caring and like also in within that competent for that entire time span with no assistance? Of course
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I mean,
it's insane to think you could.
well, that's the funny thing is I reckon Mia maybe
Okay,
did.
yeah,
Like, if there's
yeah,
one person
that's fair.
if there's one person who's stupid enough to have actually pulled off not making a 15-minute mistake for 2 years, it's Mia. I'm totally a normal amount of stressed.
Yeah.
Whatever her last name is, Hurst, I think it was.
Wow, I
Um
actually don't remember.
Like, yeah, like, I think this is funny is, like, Mia, you know, to her credit, I guess, holds herself to these stupid standards that she's holding people like Natalie to as well.
Mm,
And it's just, like, I Mia is a fun parent as well because she's kind of destroying herself at times to keep her
Mhm,
kids alive, which is a very interesting, like, at what point does that swing around to being bad parenting again? Because to a
mm,
degree, to be a good parent, you have to be a little bit self-sacrificial, like, you have to put your kid before you a lot of the time, like, otherwise you're a narcissist or whatever, but also, yeah, like, sometimes you have to keep yourself alive for the
yeah.
benefit of the kid, and, like, Mia feels like she skirts over that line at times to the point where she could start to be problematically, like, whatever the opposite of a narcissistic parent is.
I can definitely see that with Mia, like, you need to be a human in your own right, you need to
Yeah,
have your own life, and
mm.
to be a good parent.
yeah, and that's something that obviously Mia you know, struggles with that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that classic thing, like, when you hear, like, couples that aren't doing well, and it's like, "Oh, well, having a kid will fix it," and it's like, "No, no,
Oh,
no, like, you
No,
can't,
no, 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 no,
like,
no, no.
God, no.
you know, you need to be doing alright before you can sort of take care of a kid," and,
Mhm.
there's a parent I'm thinking of from Pale, I'll avoid spoilers, who I don't think was doing that well for himself, and I don't think did that well for his kid as a
Yeah,
result.
don't think so.
Um, and yeah, like that's the one concern I sort of have. Well, aside from all the crime stuff, for Mia, as a parent, is if she was going to be a bad parent in a benign sort of way, I think it would be her missing stuff because she's tearing apart herself to
Mm.
try and provide for the kids and actually missing the mark.
Mhm,
There's actually within that something I wanted to get into, which is that um, for all that there is like, these real challenges of how do you be a good parent while there's this much stress on the line, and this much of a chance that the house will fall in like it's made of cards. And even the premise of Mia being a mother is like undermined by her having also been a kidnapper. Um, Within that, I think there's something really impressive about how stakes are done in this story, because
Yeah,
what
mhm,
I am most invested in terms of things that will get out the other side of Claw and like survive the plot is like Mia and Carson's relationship,
mhm,
Ripley's like sweet and cared for childhood, Tyr like having not a care in the world. Like the stakes here is that the family is healthy,
yeah,
and things are going about as well as they could. And there are specific human criticisms about like attitude or overdoing it, or like the specifics of day to day, like hey, maybe you're putting a bit too much time into your work. I mean, did you really have to dismember the whole guy and wash his hair? I mean, that seems like a bit much. You probably could have checked in earlier, to make sure you could drive your kids to school, or maybe get some sleep so you can look after them in the afternoon.
mhm,
But the point is that if things go wrong in this story, if Davy if, like does find the house, and kidnaps the kids himself, or if Natalie invades this hermetically sealed chamber of a lovely childhood to say that the whole premise of it is profane, we would lose all of those good things that have been built on top of these undermined foundations. Um, and I especially like it because I think it's a very rare story that depicts people who have their life in a sort of end state or in a really desirable state.
Mhm.
Like it's often that you'll read about like teenagers that are like self-actualizing and like taking on responsibility for the first time, or you'll read a biography and you'll get the whole person's story, or you'll get these like glimpses where a person has very little like evolution to do over the course of a series, or my least favorite thing in the world, like a CW show where a
How
two
dare you?
characters will fall in love over the course of the first season, and then the premise to the second season is that they've broken up and you never get to see them together. And whereas here we have a loving relationship, a lasting marriage, a positive childhood situation that is both like nurturing and safe to a certain degree. Asterisk is behind every word
Yeah.
Yeah.
because everything is at risk. And the fact that it is so good is what makes us invested. So I've been really enjoying just seeing a relationship that is worth saving be in
Mhm.
this much peril.
You're right. Like we really
Yeah.
came into it when things were kind of at their peak. Like we're not watching the hero's journey where the hero is, building it up. It almost feels like we're in the second half where it's like, no, she found stability, asterisk. Um, and now that's being taken away. And I love your point about like the stakes really being driven by the family. I think that that's
Mhm.
really like from a structural standpoint emphasized by the fact that like most of the last chapter in this arc was that conversation with Natalie. And for me, that was just as, if not more intense than like, whatever psychotic shit Davey's up to
Oh,
today. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's like the climax of this arc wasn't the psycho mob guy fucking up the contact and
Mhm.
hunting Carson and Mia. The climax of the end of this arc was really Natalie just kind of casually probing Mia for information, and it was
Yeah.
so much
Mm,
more terrifying.
It was so yeah, that was so I think that really speaks to and look, I know, like, basically all of the podcasts that have been done on Wildbow's work have, like, brought this up, but, like, it's not like the big it's not the big fight scenes that really get your blood pumping. It's 2 characters sitting down and talking,
Yeah.
and I think
mm,
back to Ward, and I think for a lot of us that read Ward, one of the most, like, anxiety-inducing and most memorable scenes is, like, the dinner scene, like, the dinner
Yeah.
chapter.
oh god, I know which one you mean.
Ex
That's how
see,
impactful it
exactly,
Yeah.
is.
yeah, like, you know and it's not like these, big epic fights, and yeah, and it's the same thing here, it's like the criminal stuff, it's really intense, it really drives a lot of things home, and it brings up a lot of tension, but then Natalie walks over, and, like, that's the ending of, like, 1.6 is, like, Natalie coming to talk to Mia, and it's like, fucking hell, like, it's
Mm,
just so oh, yeah.
In the same way that, what really drives the stories about magic or aliens or superpowers is the people
Mhm.
behind them. Like, what's really driving this story about a criminal enterprise is the people on.
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. I think
'Cause
Wildbow's a master of interpersonal drama, I think is what I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Anyway.
as far as reveals go, I think in all of this, we have this great tension of what Mia is looking out for, and then to be absolutely blindsided in that climax by the reveal that Natalie Teal has a lead and is
Oh,
going for those
Yeah.
my
foundations and
heart,
it might
Jesus
find
Christ.
Ripley. That is what that leads Mia to go, I'm just gonna take over the client's operation.
Yeah.
I'm I
Yeah.
now that he's gone, now that we have to stay here, we can't flee. I need to become a criminal mastermind. And when I was
So
reading that,
good.
I had figured that her solution to Natalie, like having the lead on maybe finding Ripley, was to hire a bunch of contract killers to be in under her control for a time so that she can deal with Natalie. And that's the two worlds overlapping, and that's a hell of a premise for the rest of the for this of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah,
So
because
good.
like, talking before about how it's sort of this two separate lives thing is crumbling. And what was really fun is in the first half of the arc, we could see Mia flick between each one
Mhm.
to kind of de-stress from the other. Like we saw her family calmed her anxieties at first, but then also, family's a bit much sometimes. So then, every girl needs to go away for a bit and dismember a guy.
So true.
but
So
then
true.
also sometimes the crime gets stressful, and so she takes solace in the fact that, like, she spends time with her family, and that, warms her heart and reminds her what she's doing it for. So she was playing both sides of her life off of
Mm.
each other, and the kind of back to back Davy killed the contact and Natalie's in town is sort of that this breaking point for
Mhm.
her of she can't use either of them as the stressful relief now. Both of them are about to pop off. And
Yeah.
that's when I think it's like in 1.2 where she's talking to Ripley and she's like espousing her like One Punch Man esque life philosophy of, well, if I don't know how to do something, I just keep doing it until I'm the best in the fucking
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, she can't. There's no other option now except to become a mob boss, I guess. Like take a page out of Davy's book. If you can't beat him, join him.
Truly, Mia has such an excellent lesson about work-life balance.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
To jump back a bit, I did want to revisit like the I think the other interesting side to all the morality stuff around, kidnapping Ripley, is the second half of that argument to me is, but what do you do now? Like,
Yeah.
okay, like what Mia did was wrong. I think we're mostly on the same page about that. Um,
I don't know, she is hot,
and
so I'm kinda willing to let her get away with it.
yeah, that's true, and that would hold up in court, obviously, but,
Obviously.
yeah, no, like, Mia deserves to be punished for the crime she did, and Natalie deserves reparations and all that, but then, like, also, if you were to go through with anything like that, it kinda feels to me like the real victim's gonna end up being Ripley, like,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
happy where she is now, and so, like, part of me is disgusted by the idea of just saying, like, "Well, Natalie shouldn't do anything because, Mia is giving Ripley a good life, and it would be mean to Ripley." Like, I hate that, but I also hate Natalie should get to rip Ripley out of her life because
Yeah.
it's, like, her mom. Like, both situations suck, and I think that's what's really fun about this dilemma is we're now in a situation where justice and injustice both suck and both
Oh,
rule for
yeah.
different reasons. And so like I don't know what you're meant to do in this situation. How do you solve this without completely fucking up Ripley?
I I don't know if you can. Like, it's such a because I've been thinking about this a bit, and I kind of floated to myself, oh, maybe if you wait until like she's an adult, until she's 18, but then like what then the last 18 years of her life is a lie, like her entire
Yeah.
childhood. And it's like she still has this little brother that, she very much cares about. And like, she loves her parents. Like it's very clear that she adores her parents. So like what the fuck do you do? Like
Yeah.
there's no answer.
I'm just as disgusted with the idea of just kind of letting like if Natalie finds out just letting Mia get away with it is also
Yeah.
kind of I don't like that.
No,
Yeah.
it's
So
obvious. Yeah. There's no good answers.
And on that note, I think I'd love to get into talking about the themes,
Oh,
um,
yes.
because we're talking about that there is no good answer. Things like the strain between like justice and trauma, like in a
Mhm.
big way, the amount of harm that Mia has done has collapsed Natalie's life and like changed its whole direction. It's one of those very traumatic crimes.
mm.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, sorry, and just to jump in, like, we see with Sterling, her new son, that, like, he's got some issues, and they're clearly because she's
Yeah.
overbearing, which is, like, clearly because of what Mia did. Like, it's this thing where it's sort of like, she's kinda judging her for how she treats Sterling. It's like, "Mia, that's your fault, though. You
Yeah,
see that,
exactly.
right?" Like
Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, the repercussions of your actions, like, not being something you can escape. I really think that the reason the story is called Claw, is because usually when BioWare is saying a name, there is plenty to read into it, and it becomes
Sure.
freshly relevant as the story unfolds. But what I think is very apparent here is I don't know why it is that we specifically imagined a crab claw when we were going for the art for the series.
Yeah,
Um,
looks cool.
but I really agree with it because that sort of claw is for gripping. It's about the vices,
Yeah.
haha, and the experience of being surrounded and crushed by pressure. And we have a protagonist that lives with constant pressure
Mhm.
and is in the constant state of almost being on the like edge of breaking down. Things are closing in around her. She's just realized that the stability of her life has actually been saturated and undermined by how all of her clients haven't been moved as far away as she thought. Um, and we have the closing grip of Natalie coming in to perhaps disrupt everything. But at the same time, different sort of claw, like the kind of slashing claws that an animal might
Mhm.
have. Um, you have claws that leave scars because, as I at least as I understand it, when you have a long cutting wound, those are especially likely to scar. And we have these characters that are scarred in a huge way
Mhm.
by the traumatic crimes that have happened in their past. We have the fall that leads Mia to be in this heavily altered state from what she expected to grow up into, having to restart, having to adapt, and then getting
Mm,
further trauma from how she was treated afterward. We have Natalie, who has been scarred by Mia, hurt people. And we have Ripley, named Ripley, ripping through things that is on the knife's edge of something going horribly wrong and changing the whole direction of her life because it already happened. It just happened in a way that didn't hurt her yet.
Yeah.
And the the thing that I am really interested in as we follow Mia, like as we get through the rest of the story, is that hurt people. Mia is a victim of this sort of traumatic crime, uh, and though we don't know yet if anyone was prosecuted for the fall or if it was especially criminal, it was definitely unjust and it definitely harmed her in a lasting way. And inextricable from that, the consequential traumas, the way she was raised, impacted her to then kidnap a child, and that is also a traumatic crime, and that has
Mhm.
hurt people, hurt people, and the world is now coming to this place of tension and scarification where there's like no clear way forward, there's no easy justice, there's the good that is being done is profane, it's like it has this constant element of the asterisks after the word where she's so kind to her Asterix's daughter. She's like really like invested in her work, which is a criminal enterprise. So there's our Asterix. Um,
mm,
Mhm.
Everything is a little bit wrong and getting worse. And for that, we have the encroaching fires of the city,
Mhm.
which she links to the fire in the back of her head, like smoking up the rest of her mind. The world is being smoked up. The damages are accruing. Things aren't mending fast enough. There's no easy answer. And so the final meaning of claw that I could get to, which I see is here, is the desperation aspect of like lashing out at people when you're cornered, like a feral animal that has been pushed to the brink and has nowhere else to go. So it starts hurt people, kind of like it starts to lash out.
Mhm.
And knowing that that is the threads that we have, I am really excited to see what gets woven.
yeah, I love, like, you just helped something click for me with, like, the setting as well, because 'cause we've been talking a lot about how, like, Mia's like, self-imposed, kind of made up rules and, the foundation of, these separate lives he's tried to build are, like, falling apart, and that really overlaps a lot with all the talk of the elections, like, being suspended and stuff. Like, it does kinda seem like Mia keeps kind of forgetting about it. There's a lot of emphasis in this arc placed on the fact that she and Carson kind of, or at least she, gets distracted and forgets that the world's falling apart around them. But it's like
Yeah.
it kind of looks like it's that same foundation crumbling sort of stuff, and that's that dialed up to 11 post COVID world anxiety sort of stuff that we all have. But yeah, it does. It feels like as we're watching Mia's foundations crumble, maybe the world's doing that too, and it'll be fun to see if those play off each other later.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree.
Um, just
Okay.
before we move on though as well,
Mhm.
we haven't talked about Davy as much as I yeah. I just really quickly
Oh,
wanna,
yeah.
like, jump in and
He's
call out
amazing.
how much I'm loving Davy as, like, a
Oh, yeah.
foil for Mia, like
He's so calm. What an excellent dad.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But he's like, because he's controlling like Mia, but also he gets other people to do the work for him, whereas Mia does fucking everything herself. Lady
Yeah.
needs an assistant so badly. I hope Valentina's ready.
Mhm.
And then like yeah, Davy seems so calm, whereas like Mia's body by weight is about 80% cortisol. Um, and then
Yeah.
Davy chops people up, but he does it before they're dead, which I guess is ruder. Um,
I think
So
so.
rude. Why would you ever do that? Come on.
But personally, like if I was going to be chopped up, I would probably want it to be after I died.
no,
That is
you know
so
what? Yeah, I
respectful like
completely
that.
agree.
Like
And
I'm
I,
honestly,
definitely
I
team.
almost forgot that we were reading a Wildbow work up until that just sheer horror of
yeah,
like what Valentina had seen and what Davy does to people.
it's pretty fucking
Um,
horrific.
that's an extreme that I mean it certainly if you're trying for an objective scale, it puts Mia's crimes in a sharp contrast.
Yeah,
Very true.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
yeah, that's why Davey's acting as a great foil. Is he's got like they share a lot of strengths, but also he's like, yeah, just worse than her. Like it's classic sort of villain stuff. As it's like it's take like what defines the protagonist and make it bad, or in Mia's
Hmm.
case, worse. Um, like yeah, her and Davey are very similar in a lot of ways, and I'll be interested to see if because he also seems better with people, so there might be some Carson overlap there too. Like if Davey's kind of the best of both of them, that makes him an even more delightful villain.
Yeah, I do really like that idea of Davy being the Carson plus Mia. It's
Mm,
just he's so yeah, he's like the perfect
the
foil.
perfect life form.
Yeah,
My goodness, it can do both.
it can do both. It's just it's so good. Like Davy is yeah, like brutal and cruel, but so fascinating. And I just give me a like Wildbow, give us a an interlude from Davy's perspective. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very
But
much.
Pretty please.
most importantly, he beat up his son, which is like that was the moment where Mia's like, "Absolutely not. We're not
Yeah.
similar. He hurt his child." It's
Yeah.
like,
God, he didn't even beat him up. Like he tortured him. Like that
well, yeah,
description was fucking hard to read. Of the kid. Like Jesus Christ.
yeah, but also like he probably actually has a right to that kid, like so.
Right, because as
Jesus
we all
Christ.
know, justice is reflected perfectly in the law, and
Yeah.
paternal ownership of a child is a thing that exists, and obviously, since he's in his
Oof.
custody, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Yay!
Jesus.
No, but like, yeah, but for
Mm.
real, like that's what's fun is it's like again, like one of the bad things about Mia is that she, stole that kid, but she's
Yeah.
treating her nice. Whereas, yeah, like for Davy, it's like that's his kid and he treats him like garbage, and that's so much worse. Like,
Yeah.
Mia doesn't have the moral high ground on too many other parents, but Davy just, came out of nowhere to give her one.
She's found the one person in the world. Probably the one person in the
Exactly.
city that she has the moral high ground in parenting on, which is
Exactly. Like
amazing.
that's so fun. And
I'd
just yeah,
actually
pull out of
like
him.
to iterate on that because if we see things from the perspective of Mia's motivation, like the motive for her crimes is that she wants to be a good mother and that she wants to raise these children that she's stolen like perfectly and give them every opportunity. And then like to give them maximum autonomy, like do the care of like really the over the top care of like going in to check on Ripley, but like offering if she wants the change of clothes and then also providing dry shampoo. So like
Hmm.
it's really above and beyond.
Mm,
To have her motive be I want to be a good mother and that's why I'm going to butcher this man's corpse and that's why I'm going to make a kill house from Saw and
yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
I'm going to become a mob boss.
Oh,
We then
so
have
good.
Davy as the contrast. What is Davy's motivation to being like the criminal at the head of the kitchen? What why does he want to be head chef? Like obviously it's not for his kids
Hmm.
because he doesn't treat
Yeah.
them very well. And apparently, is it like, sadistically motivated because of the barber that like is torturing these people? Is that something that he is that something for him? Is it his contacts in like the military industrial complex? Is it just the money? Like we have like what is the maximal contrast for I want to be a good mother? And I think it is probably the like most toxically masculine vision of the patriarch of
Hmm.
like he wants to be a mob boss. He wants to be in charge. He wants to be in power. He wants to be a king ruling over his kingdom, taking what's his. And it just the more money he has, the more area he claims. That is satisfaction for him. It's what it's all for. That's what I'm thinking it might be, because that would make it a very sharp contrast to Mia,
Yeah, I like
who,
that.
for all
Yeah, I
her
like that.
very, very terrible things, does seem to have an ultimately good intention, just terrible execution.
Yeah, Mia's
Yeah.
fun evil,
Yeah.
colorful evil, you might even
Yeah.
say,
You might even say.
because yeah, like, she's done some fucked up stuff, but, like, yeah, she's not doing it to be bad, whereas Davy does so far does not seem to be living up to that same bar.
Yeah.
Mm.
They are just really they are fun foils.
Yeah, well, it's that subtle difference between being
Mhm.
evil for entirely selfish reasons and being evil for selfish for your whole family, so it doesn't count
Yeah.
reasons.
That's it's a form of selflessness. Sure.
I really
Yeah.
think about like the four big flaws of like, is this person a hypocrite? Are they apathetic? Are they ignorant? Or are they malicious? Like, are they doing wrong because they don't know? Because like it's important that they get to do it and no one else does? Do they not know what they're doing, or do they not care what they're doing?
Mhm.
And Mia is doing a lot of wrong because it seems that she's deeply hypocritical,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or perhaps deeply apathetic, where she can justify whatever she wants because she has a good intention and she knows she has a good intention, so everything's fine.
Mhm.
But now we're looking at Davy and we're thinking, is this an evil man? Is this a malicious, sadistic man? Or does he similarly see himself in a hypocritical lens where he gets to have everything and no one else does? Because he's him, he's great, and he'll justify it however he likes.
Yeah, or he
Yeah.
almost seems like he wouldn't care to. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see if he even bothers justifying things to himself.
Mm.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Might be like neutral evil, truly amoral, just
Yeah.
doing it because that's what he does.
Yeah, because that's just and, you've got to assume with someone like that, that that's how they're raised, and it's just part of the expectations on them.
Though knowing Wildbow, we'll get a interlude that starts in his childhood, and we'll feel
Oh,
super
yeah.
sympathetic about him. And oh, he's just a little poor little meow meow that we need to forgive. Because oh my goodness, has it happened before?
I mean, I wouldn't be like I would honestly I'd be kind of surprised if he wasn't abused as a child, by his own patriarchal figure in his family. If you
Mm.
like
Yeah.
if that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that the cycles of abuse and all that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's that cycle of abuse. It's that kind of like that organized criminal kind of mindset and his own mindset, which, you kind of feel like he has gone from it, that patriarchal figure of like anything that, you know,
Mm.
anything that is under me in the family unit, which is everyone but him, is like his property. It's his ownership, so he can do whatever the fuck he wants. So, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I would be shocked if that didn't come from his own family and his own childhood.
And good on Mia for breaking those cycles of abuse, not just in her family, but in other people's family too, by stealing children.
Well, that's her family now. So, um, yeah. So I did want to talk about just some gender stuff as well because I think there's been some like just quick little notes on gender here and there which I think are really interesting.
How Mia thinks she's just a weak little woman, and if she holds it, then it won't be seen as heavy.
Not quite, but that part is hilarious still. God, she's. But I think like, especially when she thinks about like the fall and stuff, I think you can really read like not not an analogy, but a metaphor, like a transgender metaphor. Like I really think about the way that she says, feeling like she's like a lot bigger than all of the other like girls her age, and she just feels
Mm.
like uncomfortable in her own skin, and like she's not welcome and stuff like that, and then having to basically learn how to be human. And, as someone that's like, I'm pretty tall, like, I'm not like a hulking Amazonian goddess like Mia is, but like a lot of the time around, especially like earlier in my transition, like, yeah, around cis women, I kind of like, I felt like that, like
Mm.
being bigger than everyone and just kind of not feeling like I knew what the expectations were and like
Mm.
the societal expectations. So I think like I really read into her whole experience with the fall, and yeah, I can really see a very clear like transgender metaphor. Like, and obviously, it's also like for people that have had like uh, traumatic brain injury, like yeah, like that experience can very much mirror that. But I also think just like the
Hmm.
specifics about like the way Mia is built and stuff like that really just does kind of
Yeah.
lend itself to that.
Well,
Yeah.
far be it for there to be two transgender hosts and not to have a more gender analysis.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
Particularly, I got really intense tunnel vision on the theory that Mia was trans,
Mhm.
um, and I was primed to believe it because I had written a self insert character called Mia, So when I read that there was a Mia who had the same natural hair as me and the same natural build as me, I
Mhm.
went, "Oh my goodness, Wildbow's writing fan fiction from my work," and as a joke, as a joke.
Yeah.
Um, and but like moving away from the hubris of that, I still had the mentality of, is Mia trans? I'm looking for the evidence of it, because this degree of negative self image I really sympathize with.
Mhm.
Um, and I was so in this television that, I registered her having stolen her children as a point of evidence for her being trans, because she didn't have them. She's like, "They're not her kids, of course." And that was the very same chapter where she talks about having her period, which is not
Yeah.
currently within the remit of science. But I was so, like, in that mentality that I overlooked it entirely. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
and
that's great.
I think that speaks to, just how, deeply Mia's experiences reflect that state of, like the lack of belonging, that sense of, like,
Mhm.
dysphoria reflected on the self, and especially, a sort of a broader, experience of being in a minority group, especially,
Mhm.
one that is, experiencing, like, prejudice in this in structural sense of, like, this place is not made for you. The expectations that are set aren't ones you can meet. As Mia is disabled in, to a degree from the fall, and has lives with chronic pain,
Mhm.
and, like, there's a lot of expectations about what a parent could do and what a mother would do, that she obviously struggles through and is so committed to, that she is willing to agitate her headache, just sooner than she is willing to tell Tyr, that he should quiet down. Um,
Yeah.
and that degree of self-sacrifice and blame that she puts on herself because she invests it as part of her identity, is thinking like, well, Carson shouldn't want me because I'm not like other girls, and I shouldn't tell Tyr to quiet down and secure my comfort because it's wrong of me to be different and be injured in this way.
Mhm.
That turning in of the blame is a really common experience when when a community or group isn't made for you, because ultimately if you blame yourself for the ways that you aren't, accounted for and that you aren't made comfortable, it feels like it's in your control. And, like, if it's your fault, then no, you don't have to blame anyone for it. You don't have to yell at your young child. You don't have to disbelieve your husband and interrogate him about why he finds you attractive. And that, I think, is a deep contributing core to Mia's anxiety, and how much, time and effort she invests into, like study and, equipping herself with, more and more skills and more cameras and more, lives to sell, because I ultimately think that these little erosions in her physical self, like her self image, the amount of pain that she's in, reach straight through to her self concept and lead her to value herself very little. And I really sympathized with that experience. So it's,
Mhm.
it's like it's the kind of, like, thing that makes you empathize with the characters so much you might overlook how much evil they're doing. And
What?
that
No.
that same chapter, is I'm pretty sure that's pretty close to the chapter where we learn that she's stolen her kid. So no, yes, it is the very same. And that one of the great strengths of Wildbow's writing is to do that and to make you so invested that you almost skip a beat about whether, someone, is the way that you've conceived of them or is the way that they
Mhm.
conceive of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is I agree.
Sorry, speaking on that last bit about over relating to the characters, I got into Claw a bit late. And the big thing I got sort of spoiled on going into it was like Mia and Carson's relationship, because I'm currently in something resembling, like, I don't know, it could turn into a relationship or whatever. And I have echoed a lot of Mia's thoughts regarding how Carson is too good for her, to that person. So she was basically DMing me quotes from Claw before I'd read it, just
Oh,
being like, "Hey, you said this to me. Hey, you said this to me."
wow, that's
Um,
brutal.
and so that's like for me, that's been part of what has been really fun about like trying to engage with Carson is because I am very much sitting here feeling very close to me, and like that's why I'm sitting here going like I don't see what Carson's getting out of this, and it's because it's like when you got these characters who have the same blind spots as you do,
Mhm.
um, it's just so fun to like I guess engage with them like that, and that's why I'm really keen to see Carson's perspective so I can try and understand
Mhm.
why somebody would be with someone like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the unfortunate thing about Mia is that she's just way, way too fucking relatable.
Mm.
But only in her, like, weaknesses, not at
Yeah,
like
yeah, no, exactly.
because she's also like, I wish that I could use my anxiety to be productive like she does, you know what I mean? I just get
Oh,
less
yeah.
productive with it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I make rules for myself all the time, and they just don't stick to them, like, Mia is a relatable person, but also kind of superhuman in her ability to overcome the weak parts of it.
Yeah, are we sure this is not like a W, like a Worm Ward story? Because, like, the way that she can use her anxiety rather than just pacing in a corner is
Mm.
it's not natural, it's not human.
You know, it's crazy because I think that might be something that Mia would say. Um,
Yeah.
she would like
Fair.
I think she doesn't have a good grasp of what her strengths are either. So if y'all are going to self-deprecate on yourselves in the same way, you might as well give yourself the same the same boons and honors that she does.
I don't
What?
think but
None.
she
Yeah, she doesn't give
she
herself
does,
anything.
I
but
know that she doesn't give herself anything, but we recognize her skills, and
That's true.
Carson recognizes them. So it might be a good takeaway that you might have the very same blind spots.
I'm not secretly running a successful criminal empire, you know what I mean?
That's what someone running a secret successful empire would say.
That that's a fair point.
Um, before we get into the spooky foreshadowing corner and talk about like where the story might be going, I just wanted to flag something that I'm working on that is not currently in a presentable state, but that I would like to be open to the community and I would love for people to help me with because it's very difficult. I'm hoping to have a crime counter a rap sheet because as we talk about these characters, you know, we're going to empathize with them a lot. And we're going to see parts of ourselves with them, and we might overlook some things, and some of those things might be murder and kidnapping and mutilation. So I thought it might be a good idea to starting this early, as we're only just through Arc One. Work on a rap sheet of writing down all the crimes committed in Claw. Um, and then at the very end, eventually, we will be able to give the possible verdicts that the characters might be due. Um, the only trouble, as I've been trying to construct this, is that it's very, very hard. um, for each accused, there's a crime, a line, a fine, and a time, what they did, where in the text they did it, and their punishments in time and money. And the problems with this ambition are that jurisdiction changes everything. Prosecution is
Mhm.
never straightforward. A case can go any number of ways. You might be found guilty on one thing and not guilty on another due to extenuating circumstances or a very good lawyer or just like well, we might have complete evidence, but the characters might not. And of course, I'm based in New South Wales, so my grasp of what things are prosecutable are going to be different from elsewhere in the world. And I could find where Camrose is theoretically and try and investigate that. But then, even from that point, we might get another listener who has entirely different jurisdiction, and the results make no intelligible sense. So, if you're a fan of justice and specific citations, we here at Clawful Evil Probable Clause would love your help. If you have a citation for a murder, a kidnapping, a mutilation, or worse that occurs in Claw, we'd love to hear about it, and we'd love to add it to the document so that by the very end we will be able to figure out what the true justice of this very morally gray story would be.
I like
Yeah.
this as well because it's looking like in universe the government is not really in or definitely won't be by the end in any position
Yeah.
to hold anybody to account. So we have to as a
Mm.
Yeah.
community.
I wouldn't want to get to the end of the story and go and Mia is completely forgivable because I like her. Um,
Wow,
So
that
and
makes
also
one
she
of
got away
us.
with it. So it's like not even a big deal. It's very optimistic, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So, do we want to talk about our spooky foreshadowing corner?
Absolutely.
Now, I think most of the spooky foreshadowing corner was created before a lot of the things that were foreshadowed were revealed,
My
which is
notes
fun.
on it are, but we can discuss where things are going.
Yeah, we do have some foreshadowing that we can talk to. Yeah. So, take us
I mean,
away.
we already, I guess, spoilers for Worm. We already compared Taylor and Mia a bit, but it does feel
Yeah,
like
that's
Mia
true.
is on her way to accidentally starting a criminal empire.
Yeah.
Accidentally might be too soft of a word.
Yeah.
Sure, but well, it's not like that's not the goal. You know what I mean? Like, to go back to the arc title, like the point isn't the criminal empire. The point
Mhm.
is keeping her kids safe. And if
Mm.
that just involves a casual criminal empiring, then she'll do it.
I
Um,
don't think premeditated criminal empire is a crime, but we can put it on the crime counter.
Yeah.
Um, the thing I would note there is that she called Carson beforehand just to confirm,
Oh, I love
which
that
is
so much.
so sweet. But we did get some of the names and the territory of the people that she had disappeared for their own safety. And we know that she's getting at the very least an ex army man, and that the general category of the people that she has disappeared is heavily informed by the contact. And as you were
Mhm.
saying, Kippo, the hope that I had was to gather enough quotes to be able to figure out who the contact was, but then he got super murdered.
Yeah.
So we can still try
Technically, I
and
think it was a
reason.
Technically,
suicide.
he committed suicide.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was ruled a suicide. But the uh like we know that he's well connected, minimal criminal
Mhm.
past. He knew a lot of people, including law enforcement. He'd served in the army. And that is presumably the texture of criminal we're going to have in a big way. In Mia's new criminal empire that's gonna drop now that he's super dead.
Yeah. Well, we know
So
that she worked with a lot of gang members. So,
yes,
yeah.
we know that there's people from the kitchen,
Mhm.
people that were ousted by the kitchen.
Yeah. Everyone except for white nationalists, basically.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments where it was like, in a vacuum, that would feel like a weird line to draw, but actually, I'm okay with that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Surprisingly topical.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, like, I don't know, I'm kind of on Mia's side with yeah, I mean, I'll kill a guy in his own vomit and then dismember him and, shampoo his hair, but I'm not gonna work with a white nationalist, and I was like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah,
I
look,
mean,
that's pretty
yeah.
reasonable.
It's a pretty good line to have drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I bet I don't disagree.
Yeah. Once again, Mia is completely correct in everything she does. I'm so glad we're back to this point.
Yeah.
Mm,
But I was to
so
say, it's so
true.
weird that you're putting together this entire spreadsheet that's just not gonna get to include the main character of the serial.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mia did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we also, I mean, Natalie's lead, like, oh, desperate to
Mm.
know what that is. Yeah, that's one of those things that I genuinely cannot wait to see because that's gonna be so fascinating to learn.
Mm,
Yeah, how she fucked
Uh,
up.
yeah, it's gonna be something benign. I loved the theory, sorry, I can't remember which one of you said it about, it just being like her mum, who
Yeah.
got in a lead and it got skipped over because, I doubt her mum comes across as super helpful, you know what I mean? Like,
mm.
her mum I mean, we've seen a very biased perspective of her, but, like, I don't know, her mum kinda seems like a bit of a dick anyway, so that
Yeah.
totally feels like a lead that could have been slept on until now.
Mhm.
Informing that, we have that very negative description, but we also have how she justifies it to herself, which is that she's afraid of Mia.
Mm.
Mm.
And as
I mean
far as the fall goes, and it was referred to in very ominous tones where we weren't quite sure what sort of genre we were in.
Yeah.
And then we learned that it was a traumatic brain injury. We know that Mia had it when she was more young than she was when she left, and fractionally, as in like her mother had more time to get to know the proverbial new her
Mhm.
than she did her younger self before the injury. And we have the question of, was it accidental? Was it intentional? there's this description that like Mia has a really specific example in her internal monologue of someone being so rough as to bash someone's head multiple times into the
Hmm.
pavement while playing.
Yeah.
And that might really inform her lens of on children, where she is very critical in her analysis in 1.7 of Ripley's friends. And there's the question of maybe maybe it's because when she was especially young, that was when she got injured. So as she was going through school, a lot of her new experiences, the ones that are clearer or at least highly relevant to this day, was when she was learning to cope, when she was regaining her skills, when she was relearning English and how to speak. We have a plenty of reason to believe that like the tiny decisions of people that aren't fully grown and aren't fully reasonable might have impacted her in a big way.
Hmm.
So maybe we'll have more to hear from that. Maybe we'll even meet someone from Nia's childhood that might have reformed or like matured a lot. And then Nia will have to cope with how she's also how her self-image adapts to someone being so fundamental or crucial, and how she has grown up herself, because that's a very vulnerable time. Another piece of foreshadowing that I was really interested in was the civil warriors, because
So
Mm.
fascinating.
I haven't read How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I don't know much about civil disobedience, I would say.
Hmm.
But the fact that it is framed as apolitical, the fact that we don't know even who is up for election or why they are so deplorable that things would be set on fire, is for one thing, excellent social commentary.
Yeah.
But for the other, I do believe that things may escalate to the point where we start seeing that, because as we said earlier, there's that question of how do we even like prosecute when things are this level of dismantled and
Hmm.
and falling apart even further. And if we meet some people who are graduates of the system, in that they're, they're well connected, they might have been law enforcement, they might have been army, who then make contact with people from Mia's past life or their past life who are still in the system and trying desperately to make it function. We have, as we said earlier, the lead on who like, how is it that Natalie even knew to pursue Mia
Hmm.
to hear, and presumably that's heavily involved with law enforcement. So I think that encroaching fire is going to start getting close enough that we'll start to see faces and characters and names that will start to pursue our protagonists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope so. That'll be, yeah, very intense, I'm sure. Okay.
I don't have anything. I'm out of the prediction game. A
Yeah.
3.5 year losing streak. I'm calling it there.
You don't want to give us a bold and specific prediction, Elliot?
No,
That's pretty reasonable.
I'm out of the game.
Yeah.
No one last jobs for me. That's suckers me or lures into
we
stuff.
can uh we can pay you and resituate you afterwards.
Oh, well, in that case.
Do you need a new name? Yes, this is Ruben
Yeah,
Morehouse.
exactly.
Yeah, I'll take one that nobody's using.
Yeah.
We didn't actually say. I did mean to say at the start of this episode. I'll do it now. Ruben was meant to be here as well,
Yeah.
but Davey got him, I guess.
Poor guy.
With
Well,
any luck, we'll have him in later.
yeah. Assuming we can like stitch back his legs and arms and
Yeah.
reattach everything from Davy.
Well, sometimes he leaves the tongue in.
Sometimes we can only hope.
Because that's all that matters in this. Though.
Oh
Like
yeah.
we need Ruben to have his tongue. Like he can podcast without limb.
That's true. As long as he has his ears and his tongue, I think we're good.
Yeah.
O-
Incredible job security.
Yeah, true. Okay, so now to our first discussion question. So, what we want to know is what do you think was the most heinous yet least criminal deed done in the chapters?
And vice versa, what was the least monstrous and most criminal thing done? Obviously, there's an abundance of terrible criminal things done in this first arc, but there are also things that aren't bad, but are crimes, and things that are bad, but aren't crimes.
So, yeah, what did you find was the most extreme example of both? And
Are you okay? I was
We're
like worried that
asking?
you were asking me.
oh no, wait, you're going to put your answer into the Reddit
Yeah.
thread.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yeah, that's our podcast. That's our episode.
Woo!
Thank you very much for listening through to the end. Make sure you go support Wildbow on Patreon. Check out our Reddit thread, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being with
Oh,
us, Elliot.
Yeah, is there anything you want to plug, Elliot, as our guest?
no, I'm out of the game.
He's out of the game. Can't bring him back in for even one more job. Okay.
No, this was my one more job.
Fair enough.
Remember to add to the rap sheet if you have time.
All right. Bye.